I've got that radiant glow, that sweet, glorious blue. And radiant
Hello there, and welcome to the Green Vault podcast, a lore-based podcast delving into the world of Fallout and its locations, be they eerily spooky, weirdly funny, quirkily strange, or wonderfully benign, while also looking into the game design aspects, architecture, loot, and quests of the locations as well. I'm your scampy lover of Fallout, Red. So welcome, dear listener. I hope your day is going well. Today we're delving into a location from Fallout 4 in the Commonwealth Wasteland, the Massachusetts State House, a dank and atmospheric location that some of you may have missed. So listen along as we adventure into a raider base now infested with Mirelurks, a good example of Fallout doing a more dungeon-type area. You can find the Massachusetts State House on the eastern side of Boston in the Boston Commons neighbourhood, a stone's throw from Park Street Station and Swans Pond. Amidst the rubble-strewn streets, this building is much more stately than the buildings surrounding it. The colonial-style structure is most notable from afar due to the rounded copper-coated roof peak and cap. The concrete and pointed steel fence wraps around the front to several steps leading to an elegant metal double-door gate. It all looks finely crafted, meant to impress. The building is raised up again to accommodate a basement, so another set of steps lead up to the front porch and white double doors, and it's flanked with 2 oil lamp posts. The porch is 2-tiered, now covered with clinging dead vines. While the ground level of the porch is arched, the second level above has concrete Roman-style columns, all very elegant. The top is edged with the short carved concrete blocks and fencing, more for aesthetics than safety I'd say, but many parts of it are now broken, and of course the same goes for a lot of the exterior. The main building itself is a dull orange brick and rectangular in shape with 2 L-shaped grey bricked wings at either side. There is a small square third floor which the roof cap sits on at the centre of the main roof. I'm describing floors and what have you from what it seems like to be from the outside. I'm assuming, of course, each row of windows is a floor, but sometimes the interior and the exterior don't quite match. The eastern L-shaped wing is mostly collapsed now, and any doors leading into the state building there are blocked. The roof has several rusted ventilation parts plugging down into the roof, but having a look around, there doesn't seem to be any real way to access the roof in-game other than using a power armor jetpack. None of the surrounding buildings have jumpable access to this roof. There's no access ladders or doors to the roof either. There are 2 skeletons you can find on the main roof next to a toolbox. Amusingly, when I was up there, one of the skeletons was glitched and it was floating in the wall, having not spawned in correctly. The only other 2 points of note for the exterior is that there is a Freedom Trail bronze seal marker at the steps of the building. The Freedom Trail is a red bricked line that runs through some parts of Boston. It leads to historical locations, and a bronze seal is outside, I guess, important buildings. I can imagine this would have been some form of mayhaps tour back in the day before the war. This seal is marked in red paint with a number 4 and highlights the L in the word trail of the seal, which reads The Freedom Trail, Boston. The other point of note is a plaque affixed to one of the taller entrance fence columns. It reads, the word new is in quotation marks, State House was completed in 1798 to house the government of the state of Massachusetts. The land selected was originally one of John Hancock's cow pastures. The original dome was constructed of wooden shingles and covered in copper smelted by Paul Revere. The state government used this building continuously until the formation of the 13 Commonwealths in 1969. So yes, very historical indeed, but now let's head inside, shall we? As you enter, you're greeted with a burning barrel pumping out smoke and an orange glow. As I said before, it's very atmospheric. The entrance is rectangular, with the lengthier part leading forwards. A no doubt once lovely blue rug is now covered with debris and is flanked on either side by 6 stately columns, holding up a cracked and broken ceiling. A once grand entrance, now creepily quiet. No enemies are in sight as you enter. The building is heavily ruined. Rubble is piled up, doorways are boarded over or blocked. More decayed vines cling to the broken infrastructure and holes in the walls. There's also remnants of a copper statue, now leaning over, pitted and broken. Amidst the skeletons on the floor, there's also the remnants of a concrete statue, now scattered throughout the room. You can only find one arm, leg, head and upper torso. The remains of picture frames cling to the walls, some askew or fallen. Almost all of their paint is vanished after 2 centuries of neglect. But there is a vase still standing tall on a plinth, which is nice. You can take it too. It's just junk though and breaks down into 3 ceramic. Moving forward, the 2 doors that lead ahead are blocked by furniture, but you can still see into the room. A grander room with stairs leading to the next floor at either side, flanked by 2 large copper lion statues. This is a common thing in game design, giving you a glimpse of an area you can get to later, encouraging you to explore and keeping you intrigued. The sound design in this area very much leans into the ominous tone. The music is eerie and droning. Your only companion, the crackling of the fire in this oppressive building. However, when having a look through the blocked doors ahead, I could hear the wet and crunchy steps of something. I personally can recognize it as the footfalls of Mirelurks, but to those who don't know, it could be rather spooky indeed. The only viable path to you is to the left as you enter. A broken door leads to hallways, but they're all blocked off. In a side room, the floor is collapsed, creating a ramp up to the first level. Quick note to some listeners, in Britain, most of Europe and my country, Australia, the ground floor is the main floor. The floor above is floor 1 and so on. I know this differs as some call the ground floor, floor 1. I'll be sticking with ground floor, then floor 1, 2, etc. So just remember that as you go on. Heading up the ramp, the ruins continue. Pretty much every room in this building is filled with debris and destroyed furniture, so I'll stop describing those from now on unless it's important. It saves me a lot of time. Just imagine that there's, destroyed furniture and debris everywhere. Now we see our first signs of life, although of course someone would have been maintaining that burning barrel too, but you know what I mean. There's a fun little trap Fallout likes to do, putting something ahead of you to get you to rush forward to it without being aware of your surroundings. Through a walkable hole in the wall, the only way forward actually, is a plate of mouldy food and a can of purified water sitting on a crate, placed as if someone was sitting down on the crate to eat but got interrupted. At your feet as you walk through is a laser tripwire, set to drop grenades on your head. This one's pretty easy just to step around and it's very obvious. It's one of the more obvious traps you can come across. The red laser itself of the tripwire is especially easy to see. Just around the corner, you stumble upon the body of a raider. A door next to him leads to a storage room and your first enemy, a Mirelurk spawn. Very easy to defeat, but that lets you know adult Mirelurks will be around. For the uninitiated, Mirelurks are giant mutated crustaceans. The ones in Fallout 3 are different to Fallout 4's, however. 3's are supposedly mutated from horseshoe crabs. These ones are more human-like, sort of. They're big crab creatures that walk on 2 crabby legs. Fallout 4's Mirelurks are more crab-like in regards to movement, skittering along on multiple legs. I wanted to look into what they're based on, but most people state it isn't mentioned. However, the independent Fallout wiki, the place I use to cross-reference information and such, states Ada, a robot companion, says they are also irradiated hyper-evolved horseshoe crabs. I guess they're mutated a bit differently, perhaps. I personally suspect that in Fallout 3, it was easier to just make them a bipedal creature because they couldn't do it any other way, something they were able to correct and render and animate properly in 4. But yes, back to the State House. In this storeroom with the Mirelurk spawn, you'll find the body of a scavenger. They have a note on their body called State House Note, which reads, "If you're reading this message, then I'm probably dead and my plan didn't work. I've been taken by a group of raiders to the Massachusetts State House, forced to help them uncover the valuables, in quotation marks, of this building. Who would have thought knowing how to read would be what finally gets me? I think I can stay alive as long as I keep feeding them what they want to hear." So yes, unsurprisingly, the nefarious raiders are illiterate. They kidnap this scavenger to read the terminals. There are several entries you can read on the terminal as well. The room itself contains a makeshift cooking spot in the centre with 2 chains dangling from the roof above. I assume the scavenger was locked to the chains when she wasn't working on the terminal and potentially made to cook for the raiders. That's the environmental storytelling I'm getting from this scene anyways. Reading the terminal, you'll find it belonged to the treasurer, Robert Yemelin. There's a note about the plumbing needing to be fixed and a maintenance crew coming in to do it, which probably explains the 2 skeletons with toolboxes on the roof. Through archived entries and emails, you can read that Robert was in love with Susan M., the human resources consultant, but someone else is interested in her too. Robert has a note on T. Daniels, stating, "Daniels knows how Robert has felt about Susan ever since he got here," leaving you to believe Daniels is wooing Susan. Robert plans to not give Daniels baseball tickets so he can go with Susan to the game without Daniels being there. Another email finds Susan rejecting Robert's invite as she has a dentist appointment, but she suggests next time, so potentially a genuine rejection, or maybe she's not interested. It's impossible to know from this terminal. There is an email from Daniels asking Robert to come to the cafeteria for cake and coffee, as Robert will be working on his birthday and Daniels wants him to still have some time to celebrate, which is all very nice indeed, so we can probably gather Daniels is either devious or kind. He even asks and confirms Robert's favourite cake, so yeah, he seems nice, I suppose. It makes Robert seem bitter. An interesting archived entry labelled Finances reads, "Financial reports for the previous fiscal years have been filed. Major discrepancies from last year include increases to military spending and reductions to healthcare, utilities and public transport. Not that anyone else will ever know, the reports will undoubtedly be changed before released to public record." Underneath that entry is one labelled Quitting. "I can't stand this place. I'm leaving the beginning of next year. I don't care if anyone sees this. I'm not a commie." So yes, very interesting indeed. It makes me think that the war was brewing more and more, finances were being moved to support military, but it was all being covered up. At least that's what this terminal sort of suggests. The quitting note is hard to guess at what happened exactly yet, as you need more information. So sadly, the scavenger didn't make it. Probably taken down by the Mirelurks you'll soon meet. Heading back out, you'll step out into the first floor landing of the stairs we saw from the entrance, the one with the lions on either side. An adult Mirelurk patrols the top landing with another bursting out of a mound of dirt, as well as several Mirelurk hatchlings which come out through holes in the walls in the lavatory. A meeting room at the top of the 2 staircases that contains the surprise Mirelurk also has a lift in it, along with meeting tables, all of which have those table lamps no doubt inspired by those classic green bank lamps. There is also your typical lectern and flag on a pole. It's all very Americana state house. You can't use the lift as that's the old classic end of the dungeon quick return. The building, by the way, is very linear, much like a proper dungeon crawl. The meeting room only leads back to the entrance via a hole in the floor, and the doorway further into the building past the 2 lion statue staircases is blocked. You'll need to head through an opening in a wall on the ground floor in this area to continue. You'll find more raider bodies studded throughout this general area. The lion statue room also has a lovely and mostly intact painting of a sail ship in a treacherous seas above the doorframe, and a nicely engraved copper sconces in the roof for lights. If you're able to look up or know what early colonial governmental buildings look like, rather stately ones, this is pretty much it. It's intentionally left unclear exactly when our timelines diverge, but the general time frame is around the end of World War II. So our history and Fallout's history is exactly the same, around 1945 and earlier. So architecture should also be relatively the same. Through a wall you can find a room with a mattress. More good environmental storytelling sees a beer bottle, a pack of cigarettes and an ashtray with a 10mm pistol lying next to it. Next to that is a picture frame of a nice pre-war countryside scene surrounded by lit candles. You can easily imagine a gruff raider lying down to stare at the picture frame, imagining a different life in a less destroyed world as they drink themselves to sleep. We also get another terminal in this room. This one belongs to Lieutenant Governor Graham. Lieutenant to some of you out there, sorry. An email from Daniels, Robert's rival, asks everyone to come to the lounge for coffee and cake to celebrate Robert's birthday. Archived entries have Governor Graham complaining about the plumbing and how undignified it is to have to be seen walking across the street every time he wants to use a lavatory. He demands the maintenance crew finishes in 1 week before he'll throw them out. 3 entries give a clearer idea of what was going on. The first is storage. Following the outbursts related to my recent changes to political power, we'll be moving any important artifacts to storage. They'll be moved back once we feel it's safe. History will be preserved. Next is one called Public Order. Today we place the city under martial law. Nobody wants to do this, but it has to be. Only a commie would suggest these actions aren't necessary, and I'll be dead before a Red tries to dictate how I protect my country. The final is retirement. How dare they attempt to remove me from office during a time like this? Robert just wants to take my place just before we make our big move. That fat weasel. To hell with tradition, I will remain governor. I'll take the long walk when I damn please. So Governor Graham declared martial law and accused the Treasurer, Robert Yemlin, of being a commie, explaining his note about quitting. It seems mayhaps Robert was trying to talk sense into the governor and it was not well received. It seems like calls were made for Graham to resign as well, or perhaps attempts were even made to remove him from office. Who knows how physical or maybe more petition-y that might have been, it's hard to say. He was obviously paranoid around the idea of Robert wanting to take his job as well. Governor Graham seems to have gone mad with power and refused to resign, basically. Elsewhere in the world, you can come across a Mr. Gutsy, which is a more weaponized version of the Mr. Handy robot. When you're nearby, it will stop you and say, "Halt! This area is under martial law by order of Provisional Governor Graham. Chinese infiltrators are known to be operating in this area. Please provide proof of your identity. Be advised that I'm authorized to use deadly force if you fail to comply." So Graham proclaimed himself Provisional Governor and authorized interrogating people with deadly force. And as far as I can find, that's all the information you get about Governor Graham and his escapades. So moving forward, there is a beautiful use of lighting. To the right, there's a painting in a brighter room than the hallway you're walking in. A relatively intact portrait is hung on the wall of a stately-looking person, drawing your eye. As you get closer, however, a long shadow that hits the wall next to the portrait resolves itself to be a figure of a person. Stepping around the corner cautiously, you'll find it to be a skeleton in clothing, sitting on a chair casting the shadow. It's a nice touch to increase the tense mood of this building. Another caved-in roof leads up again. We get a few glimpses of the atrium here as we move down a hallway, finally going back down a floor which leads to the actual atrium. As you enter, a crow flutters away, heading upwards. The atrium is a circular room with a vaulted ceiling, ending in the rounded roof cap we saw from outside. The atmosphere here is oppressive, lit only by the few working double-bulbed wall lights. What was probably once a grand room to enter is now in utter ruins. Crows flutter around above you, flittering from banister to banister of the first-level walkway that rings the middle level of this room. Some crows head up further to sit on other debris or cables. The room is ringed with more Roman-style columns and no doubt had many more paintings decorating the wooden elegant walls, but now only a few remain. Higher up on the second level, you can see a raider-made walkway, filled with their typical accoutrements, such as rusted cages filled with skulls and barbed wire posts with even more skulls. Again, something else you can see but can't reach. The only way ahead now is down, as the thick concrete floor has given way to a drop into the foundations. Unless you have a jetpack, there is no way back up once you drop down other than going forwards. The basement is gloomy, filled with puddles of water, wet mud, and damp air. The drop is probably around 2 standard floor levels into water that cushions your fall. The water is of course irradiated and more Mirelurks burst out of the ground as you land. This time a Mirelurk hunter spawns, a tougher version of a Mirelurk. The only light now comes from luminescent green mushrooms scattered around the vaulted room and a single lantern next to an electronically sealed door. Fog hangs in the air as you look around at the brick foundations, now crumbling and crooked, It holds up what's left of the ground floor above. If you look around, you can see a terminal through a hole in the wall, letting you know that there's a terminal you need to go to open that door. Another case of see it now, be there later. A red cable leads from the sealed door to the right. Following it leads into a storage room filled with, of course, Mirelurks. There's a lot more furniture as well, and because it's the Fallout universe, yes, you guessed it, barrels of radioactive waste, because of course there is. Ahead is a room filled with large burst pipes, water, and a whole lot of Mirelurk eggs, which kindly explode as you walk past to release the Mirelurk spawn which attack you, naturally. The last room is a power room with more broken pipes, barrels of waste, and steel grated walkways now mostly collapsed. The terminal only unlocks the door, which you can see through the man-sized hole in the wall, allowing you to confirm the door opens and jump through to quickly keep moving forward. However, now welcome to Jump Scare City as a Mirelurk queen bursts out of the floor at the center of the room. It genuinely made me jump. The room is pretty cramped for a Mirelurk queen, this one actually being smaller than the one you face at the castle, but still standing at least double your height. The queens apparently resemble more of a giant isopod or spider crab. The hunter, which I mentioned before, apparently is a bit more like a lobster. I'm no real expert on crustaceans, so I had to look these up and I'll just take the wiki's word on it. Through the now unlocked door, you head into service corridors with wooden floors and concrete walls, with piping tracing across the ceiling. Ahead, you get a really great scripted sequence. The wooden floors are cracked here. When you walk down the right corridor of a T section and get to the end, banging noises make you turn around. Dust bursts from the broken floor and wood shifts upward as something in the dirt bangs into the flooring from below. Slanting from underneath the ground, it moves forward towards you until it reaches a patch of dirt, then a Mirelurk bursts out to attack you. The wood itself does actually shift too, so they definitely would have had to script it and it wasn't just a VFX of dust and then noises. They actually had to animate some of the floor moving, which is cool. It's quite an effective scare and a nice touch indeed. There is one room on this side of the junction with the terminal, and also a bottle cap mine for the unwary, which does tip you off that there may be more humans around, keeping up the already heightened tension in this dungeon. Hello there, I'm interrupting myself to ask you if you wouldn't mind leaving a comment, liking and subscribing. This channel's very new and any interaction really helps. So thank you for doing that, and let's get back to it, shall we? The terminal belongs to a maintenance man called Frankie. He has an email about Robert's lounge birthday party and 4 archived entries. It's mostly him complaining and wanting to leave this place as it's, quote, going to hell lately, and lamenting the bad state of the pipes. He also complains about going home smelling awful, something his wife also remarks upon. He calls the job the scummiest job I've ever had. He has one entry on Daniels, complaining of the urine that, quote, that drunk Daniels often leaves in the lavatory floor. So yes, a little curveball into the idea that maybe Daniels is slightly different to what you may think, or perhaps exactly on brand, depending on where you fall on what you think Daniels is like. Either a kind-hearted co-worker that also has fallen for a dame, or a woman-wooing jerk that's outwardly intentionally nice to cover up the fact that he's a drunk jerk. Let me know in the comments where you fall. Heading back down the corridor, you come across more mines through the crumbling ruins of concrete walls, then a tripwire attached to a shotgun trap further down a corridor. Now we finally stumble upon the survivors of the raider group. After heading up a caved-in ceiling, it's a common way to get up and down the floors in this place apparently. Now you find yourself in a layered red wallpapered wooden stairways. They start from the more normal basement level all the way up to the top. The very top level is blocked off with a turret guarding it. The raiders have themselves some workbenches, but nothing else in these sets of stairs really. Basically it's just the stairs and a couple rooms at the top. There is a machete plunged into a painting of a proud looking deer. I guess they disapproved of the art style or something. Lastly, there is a room you can jump to. The floor juts out just enough for you to jump on it and open the door. Inside is a nice painting of a classic farm with red barns. The desk is sort of one of those classic teacher desks, sitting area at the center and drawers at either side. A classic wooden desk. Underneath it is a cymbal clapping monkey that goes off when you walk in. I hate those damn jerks. Their eyes glow red and everything. It's intentionally very sinister. Most disturbingly, however, is the desk itself. While yes, the cymbal-clapping monkey toy underneath it is weird, and the floor itself has an adult-sized skull, femur, and left foot bone, the desk itself is very aligned. The chair is pushed in precisely at the center. The chair facing it, the spot where someone would be interviewed might sit, is also precisely centered. 3 pencils sit on the desk, all aligned to a perfect 90-degree angle and perfectly spaced. A lamp, cigar box, and ashtray are all perfectly set at a 45-degree angle on the right corner. A jet inhaler is neatly in front of where the sitter at the desk would sit, and on the left of the desk is an aligned in and out paper box and another smaller one. This smaller one, however, has 3 very small collection of hand bones in it. Imagine a skeletal hand of a smaller sized monkey. That sort of size. A left hand and 2 right hands. It's quite a sinister space, especially with a slowly spinning fan on the ceiling at the center and 1 ominous glowing light. But yes, moving along, the way you need to go forward is through a locked door. It's a master level lock as well. They seem to do this when it's not vital that the player finds the key because of story reasons or triggers, but still would like you to search for the key. If it's vital, they make the door only unlockable with a specific key. The key is located on the other side of that turret-blocked staircase. You need to wind your way around to find it. The locked door leads to that Raider-created walkway we saw above in the atrium before we jumped down. However, just before the locked door, there is a thing called a port-a-diner. It's a red, retro-futuristic glass-encased machine that uses a claw to pick up a plate of food to give to you. Back in the day, I imagine it could have been at a diner and you pop in a few coins to get a lovely pie or something from it. Now inside at the center of every one of these machines you find throughout 4 is a perfectly preserved pie. It's a delicious looking slice of pie with red topping caked on top with a dollop of a lovely looking cream. Due to the preservatives in it, it's perfectly preserved despite being over 200 years old. You can operate the machine and there's a very small chance you'll actually get the pie. Otherwise the claw drops it and you need to try again. I have never, ever got the pie myself. Thanks to the wiki, people have delved into the code and found the calculation for it. With a luck of 10, there is still only a 2% chance of attaining the pie on the first attempt. And luck is a stat I never up that much. If I'm reading this right, and I do reserve the right to say I'm not a mathematician and don't quite understand calculations that much, your chances are your luck times 4 plus how many attempts you have made on that machine over 20. Again, a lovely extract from the Fallout Independent Wiki, so thank you again to them. By cumulative properties, a sole survivor, which is you, with a luck of 5 has a 50% chance of attaining the pie within the first 36 attempts. Luck 10 reduces that to 26 attempts, while luck 1 doesn't reach those odds until 49 attempts. Depending on the sole survivor's luck, it takes between 75 to 105 attempts to reach 95% chance of getting the pie, and 109 to 140 attempts to reach a 99.5% chance of getting the pie. I personally don't like the idea of just standing around and eventually getting the pie. Whenever I see the machine, I always give it 3 attempts, then leave. That is my rule. If you watch my Let's Plays, and you should by the way, there's nice high quality edited videos in modded Fallout games and such, links in the description, then you may have seen me attempt it. I feel like just standing there and continuously attempting it or finding the one in Nuka World DLC that guarantees it on the first attempt is empty. I want the thrill of low chances and still getting it. Perhaps someday, dear listener, perhaps someday. Anyway, moving on, you can head through the door and around the top of the atrium. The last area is a section of wooden rooms with sightlines to enemies within, through the large amount of holes and decayed walls. The dungeon ends with a battle against a power armor suited ranger, which would no doubt be scaled appropriately to your level. Just before the lift that leads back down to the meeting room at the start, there's a trunk with some leveled loot as well. So now if you want to, you can head back down the lift and out the building. However, there is one last thing that you may have missed. There is a secret room you can find. Just before you head down the ramp to the atrium and the drop into the basement, if you look up on the ramp, you can just make out a hole in the roof. It's completely dark in there. You need a jetpack to get into this room. It's very easily missed. Going up through the hole, you'll find a single dark room. only lit by your torch. As you land, a loud horror sting stabs. It's a discordant note on a piano with what almost sounds like the flaying of a steel cable with a metal knife. That rings out as you look upon a skeleton lying on the muddy ground. Next to it is a psycho injector, but most creepily, surrounding it are 3 teddy bears, all staring directly at the body. It's a prime example of a fun extra that you can often find throughout the Fallout games. And well, that's it. The dungeon is finished. This area is very much just a nice optional area that you can completely pass by and never enter. Next up, I normally talk about the quests, but there aren't really any quests for this place. The only thing is the Road to Freedom, which is to do with the seal you found outside this place. In regards to loot, there isn't anything special either. No legendaries or cool weapons, no magazines to increase skills. Just some standard loot you'd find elsewhere in the game. The reward, I think, is a relatively spooky time and some dungeon adventuring. So as always, I'd like to end with my final thoughts. It is a very cool and well-designed and fun dungeon. It's very atmospheric, like I've probably said a few times too many already. A lot of smoky fog and very few lights here and there, creating shadows and just real scary spots. If you're someone that's a bit more jittery or jumpy and doesn't like scary stuff, it's honestly a place you might want to avoid. There's a lot of using that technique, as I've described a few times, about seeing sight lines, looking ahead, then eventually coming around to that spot. Yeah, it's a very small dungeon, so you get to the spot relatively quickly, but it's still that nice game mechanic of, oh, there's a spot, and then, oh, you find yourself in that spot looking back and going, oh, cool. The terminals have a pretty interesting story as well. The governor at the time probably would have been a powerful and influential person and affected a lot of lives around them as well. Martial law and all that stuff was, pretty horrible things happening. As in regards to the love triangle between Robert, Susan and Daniels, I personally think it's a bit more up for interpretation what might have actually happened. The wiki sort of stated as almost fact that Roberts was in love with Susan and Daniels was intentionally dating her despite knowing that, and was a drunkard and what have you, and being a bit of a jerk. And the act of being actively involved in the party stuff was a way to seem nice but still being a bad guy. I think you could interpret it as mayhaps, yes, he had a drinking problem, obviously, but apart from that was just a nice person and took a great shine to Susan. We don't know the ages of these people either. Susan and Daniels could be much more appropriately, as you might say, aged, whereas the treasurer could have been this, much older guy that was just rather being creepy towards Susan. You don't really know. But it easily could have not been that too. Robert, Susan and Daniels could have all been around the same age. Daniels could have liked Susan legitimately or just doing it to spite Robert. It also seems like Robert was in love with Susan but had never made a move either. Perhaps Daniels was intentionally doing it to spur Robert on to finally take the plunge. Who knows in the end? In the end, I think it would have been fantastic if they had one more terminal for Daniels, and then we could have really known his intentions, I suspect. But yes, a nice little fantastic dungeon, a good atmosphere, creepy as well, as Fallout sometimes will do. They'll do the more light-hearted areas, the fun areas. This one is very much that ominous, dark, creeping around, getting attacked by Mirelurks, which often jump out of the ground and jump scare you, basically. I do love the visual storying of the tale that these raiders owned this place, ran this place as it were. The Mirelurks came in and now they're actually trapped in their own base. There's no way for them to actually get out. All the windows are boarded up. I mean, yes, realistically they could pull those boards down and jump out the window or climb down or what have you, but game sense wise, there is no evidence of that happening. So they kind of seem like they were locked up there. They might have been eventually starved and left to rot while the Mirelurks just ruled the place. Some very good environmental storytelling all around, indeed. But yes, that's it. That was the Massachusetts State House, an optional and easily missed location you can find in Fallout 4. As always, please do like and subscribe if you can and leave a comment. Interaction really helps out when you're trying something new like this. Also, if you have a place you think you would make a great podcast episode, do let me know. Tell me why you think it'd make a great location as well. At the moment, I'm more sticking to what I'm familiar with, which is Fallout New Vegas 3 and 4. Mayhaps 76 in the future, but 1 and 2 I'm a lot less familiar with. So I'm sticking to something more familiar whilst I get used to doing a podcast and what have you. If you want to hear more from me, I do have some other channels where I do gaming and such. Check out the description or this channel for the links. And a lovely thank you and shout out to the Independent Fallout Wiki, not sponsored of course. It's just a great place for me to cross-reference information and see what I missed and what have you. And yes, as always, I do go around to these locations, walk through it myself, then I'll go and have a look at the wiki, see if I missed anything and all that sort of good stuff, just to really get a final and proper picture of this place. It's also a great way to find information pertinent to the location I'm at that might be found elsewhere in this game or perhaps even maybe another game. But yes, that is it for now. So thank you very much for listening and I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.